just checking to make sure you guys can hear us as we let a few more people kind of join and see what's happening. So welcome. As we get going here on this stream, I always like to double check to make sure you guys can hear me here as we come out. Talk a little weather here. We're obviously dealing with some snow here as you guys have kind of dialed into this right now. And I'll kind of double check to make sure you guys can hear me ahead as the feed switches over. All right, cool. So you guys can hear me. Double check. Always like to do a little double check here. First and foremost, you see St. Charles. Main Street, St. Charles. It looks excellent outside. We have seen the snow for the last several hours. That has been the big thing that we've talked about. And we mentioned this with our updates for you yesterday and through this morning about how we're dealing with the banded areas of snow. And those bands are starting to wind down. But I want to talk about this specifically, and I'll go into detail about what's going on right now, what we can expect the rest of the evening, and then answer any questions you may have here on the stream. As I'm looking at the Facebook stream, you can hear me listen to myself. Thank you, Alderman Patrick Barkley, for 2.3 at Lambert so far. So a nice early update. So thanks for that update here. Main Street, St. Charles looks really nicely. First and foremost, let me put this on a full screen so you guys can see what's happening. Because the main thing that we're dealing with still is the fact that it is pretty cold here. If you guys are tuning in between some of these football games, obviously, temperature-wise, we're still right around freezing. That's an important key component because as we look at these temperatures right here, the closer they're to around freezing, that's why the roads aren't that bad. The roadway surface temperatures, as we've been looking at some of the MoDOT reports and things of that nature here, are around 34, 35. So with them being treated and the snow falling, overall, your driving conditions are okay, and I'll show you some of the current road conditions here as well. As we look ahead, of course, like I mentioned, with our temperatures being on the cold side, look behind this, and that's the frigid air, those 20s, those low to mid-20s that will settle into the overnight hours. We still have that winter weather advisory in place for another couple of hours, but the main story has been the fact that we've had, all that rain that has kind of settled in. And, let me get this dialed in here for you. We have seen all of this rain and snow eventually switch back and forth. Depends on where you were. You saw that rain this morning near Rolla, but look at this over the last few hours. And I'll loop this back through this morning and how this really started to take shape, because look at the other side of the state. When we talked about this last night, if you were following along for some of these, and I talked about there's going to be a thin band where this snow is going to get really heavy really quickly. You'll notice right along I-70 all the way back to Wichita, Topeka here, that's where you saw that thin band from 70. That's why travel along 70 was real difficult for a while, getting to this Mizzou game that a lot of us are watching here right now. And you'll see the back edge of this. This is where we had that steady stream of moisture that I mentioned, where overall a lot of this snow was not going to impact us a ton, but still cause a few issues. And it was along I-70. As I put this on a full screen, you can see right now as we kind of talk about what takes shapes. Thank you, Alderman Barkley. That's really awesome. Thanks for that is really cool that you're able to kind of give us an idea of what's happening there. The supervisor at the FAA Contract Weather Office at Lambert. So always nice to hear from you. So that's our first inch of snowfall so far this season. First time we've gotten 2 inches in a while. I'll have to check on that, Alderman Barkley, to see when the last time we had 2 inches of snow at the airport was, because it's been a while. I know that, right? But as we talk about what's happening throughout the rest of the afternoon, notice how those banded snows have sort of gone away to some degree, right? There are still some areas where you'll see these darker shades closer to the airport, closer to 170 and 270. You'll see where we have some pretty dark shades here of snow, where it's much lighter in Millstadt, Freeburg. That's not causing you too many issues, but there will be some spots where you're going to pick up some additional snowfall. On the back edge of this, though, look behind it. Not quite as bad, but there's still some spots where look at those banded areas of snow, and that's what we talked about when it comes to getting some more of the snow. It's where we're going to see those areas that we have these bands of snow, and this is not going to pick up how much snow, it's just going to say precipitation, where you're going to look at precipitation rates of 7/100 of an inch, but look at the snow, look at the difference when I queue up some of the lighter areas of snow. So obviously the moisture content there is a little bit different, but when you look at some of the areas of where all this snow continues to fall over the last 30 minutes, what we want to point out, Denise, I'm just kind of looking at the comments here as I scroll through the radar. Denise asked if the roads were bad. She's leaving work from going from Ballas to St. Peter's at 4:30. I'm actually going to zoom in on traffic for you here in a second, so just stand by. my personal perspective, a couple of hours ago, it wasn't all that bad. I haven't been outside in a couple of hours because of those temperatures being on the warm side. But let me put this back on the radar, and I'll start to get to that right now. In fact, last measurable snow at Lambert was February 16th with 3.4 inches. Thank you, Alderman Barkley, tuning in. So we appreciate that here. If you guys are checking in on the 5+ stream, I've got some viewer comments here as well. Checking out from the current road conditions overall. You'll look, and I think you really notice if I don't zoom in on this, which I will in a second, but if I don't zoom in on this, you'll notice that the city and county of St. Louis is pretty nice. But once you get on some of those county borders, you can tell where, let me zip back here because it's not going to let me, that map's a little problematic because it's got a lot of data points here inside that. But just overall, you can tell driving I-70 is a little more difficult. Now let's zoom in on some of the road conditions here. A lot of those areas partially covered here, but I want to zoom in on this traffic map, and I'll actually pull this up for you here to look at some of those spots. Right now, you can tell that it is getting much slower as we look at 270 and 64. That's where we have a few issues. We also have an issue on 170. Like I mentioned, it is snowing harder, so you have an issue right now, and you know, you got a I-70 northbound, we got a crash here at Olive. So 170 northbound there. And then eventually, like a little closer to where you are on 70 in St. Peter's, let me get to 70, really 70 and 270, it is getting slow. And you'll notice where it's getting slow specifically is these areas where the overpasses and these bridges and on-ramps. You know, the roads itself are fine. That's kind of what I saw. It's the overpasses that get a little colder. Those are where we're really seeing some of these issues. Look at the bridge too. You can see the traffic data showing up there as well. Same thing, another spot. Bridges are slower right across, you know, here at 364 crossing the Missouri River. And then, you know, Weldon Spring, Chesterfield, you can see the bridges are slower. And that's because it's colder. And, you know, you have to go slower along all of these bridges. That's where all my traffic data says that it is going to be slower. So you'll notice where you're at St. Peter's right now. If I zoom into some of that local road data here, you'll see that anywhere where you're turning and there's an on-ramp, that's where it seems to be slower, Denise. So if you're still tuned in, that's kind of what we look at. Overall, there's nothing that's showing up as red except 55 right now. That does seem to be a little slower here in terms of being 55 into 70. That's where we seem to have a backup. So that is a slow spot right now, and that's where it's actively snowing. When you compare it to the radar, you know, you can really see where active snow here. Chuck is tuned in. And he said how he's got to go to Chicken and Pickle. I know exactly where that is. He's leaving from Bethalto. So all the way from Bethalto to Chicken and Pickle, I think you're still going to deal with a pretty steady amount of snow. Because if you're going on 270 anywhere North County, we've got a pretty steady amount of snow. And over the last 30 minutes, notice how the snow, we still have that banding of snow. So that's what we're probably going to deal with the most. I think the road conditions are okay, but it's definitely something you probably have to add 30 minutes for that. I think that's kind of where we're setting up right now when you look at what's going on here in terms of the highway conditions and what's going on specifically. Like I said, there's a lot of green. And you look at this, there's a lot of green on 270 northbound. There's a lot of green on 55 here. There's a lot of spots where you're in just fine shape here. But you know, when you go on the other side of the river, like I said, there are going to be some slow spots across the bridges. So when you get to St. Charles, the slower spots here across the bridges, and it's the on-ramps. You'll notice it's yellow. There's some slow spots, but it's going to be okay. Just give yourself a half an hour because, you know, it's always the other people, right? You know, that's what we just got to blame. So overall, though, you'll notice where we see those bands where it's snowing, and then to the south, not so much. Richwoods, DeSoto, Bonne Terre, not so much. But 55 south on Festus, there's some pretty decent snow. And as I just pull up some of these cameras here where you can see, you'll notice that, you know, it's still snowing a pretty fair amount. So that's downtown right now. So it's still snowing a pretty fair amount as you look at some of these spots here as well. Main Street, St. Charles, pretty much anywhere, it is still snowing at a pretty fair amount. So expect that you're going to be dealing with some pretty good snow that's coming down. And it's accumulating, but it's going to take some time here for it to cause too many issues. So overall, that's what I want to look at. Now, here are the things that I want to look at before I go back to the radar, because let me get back to this. That's what's going to do this for, because I think the rest of the night you're going to deal with a couple of issues here mainly, and it is going to be the fact that we're still dealing with the snow winding down. So this is lagging behind me a little bit, so I want to make sure you guys can see. So the main things for us right now are the fact that the snow is going to be winding down over the next 2 to 3 hours. It's working its way out of here. Obviously, the winter weather advisory ends at 6 o'clock. It's working its way out of here. But, the rest of the night, I do want you to prepare for the roads to probably get a little more slick, because we're going to see temperatures fall, and that's where we're going to see some refreezing with those slushy surfaces, those treated roads. As the temps fall, the sun sets, that's going to make a big difference, I think. So this is kind of what we've been talking about all along. So as the snow winds down, you're going to see this, slick roads and refreezing of slushy surfaces. And temps will fall as we start to clear out from west to east. Bridges and overpasses, those on-ramps, those are the things that are our biggest issue. So as we look ahead, you'll notice that over the next several hours, watch this snow continue to work its way out, and watch our temperatures fall into the 20s here. And once the snow works its way out by 8 or 9 o'clock, I mean, it's really going to settle down by 6 or 7, mostly from north to south. Debbie just mentioned Farmington. Farmington's still staying above freezing, not as much of an issue. Eric just said that in Arnold, it's mostly just accumulating on the grass. Things are settling down, and look at these temperatures overnight. They're going to fall into the upper teens and low 20s as we start to clear out. So once again, like I said, it is going to be slick. I'll have another look at the radar here as we continue to give you an idea of what's happening here. The big picture is this entire system continues to push out of here, but watch how this wide area of snow starting to break up a little bit. Also, still, we have a few of those bands that are picking up. So the further south you are, I think at this point, from Arnold, Melville, South County, Cedar Hill, south of Wildwood and Eureka, you're starting to see these bands, these little fingers that are picking up. Notice that from Cuba to Sullivan, we're still seeing a few of these spots where we have more of these bands of snow that are continuing, and that's going to be the issue for us here. Like I said, downtown St. Louis, this is what it looks like here on the radar. That's what it is doing outside. That's another look at downtown St. Louis. So the arch, it's coming down at a pretty good clip. And as Alderman Barkley told us, we've already had over 2 inches of snow at Lambert. So you're still looking at some of these spots, 1 to 3 inches. That snowfall map that we showed last night, just to kind of give you an idea of what we were looking at, I think it's lined up pretty well from what we drew. I think 1 to 3 inches. There are spots to that north where we had those bands, and that's what we were looking at in terms of the potential snowfall. And pull that up because I didn't switch the camera feed, but I'll do that for you in a second. So let me switch this back away from the snow here. This is what I showed you last night in terms of a final snowfall tally. And we were just saying how most of us here were going to get the 1 to 3 inches in that winter weather advisory. And then where it was a little warmer, you didn't see the snowfall rates. But it was that band that started a little earlier and we picked up that heavy band. That was the one that was on I-70. So, of course, that's going to line up pretty well from what we've had and what you see on the radar. So just to kind of give you an idea of what we've had for now, you look at there's that band that's kind of settled in. Here's this little secondary band right about here. You can see where this secondary band is pushing out. And this is all moving off to the south and southeast. So over the last 30 minutes, you can really see that here. This snow continues to push its way out. We also see that in Arnold and Festus. But the thing about that is temperatures a little warmer to the south, right? Let me just pause this so you can, let me pause this and let me put temperatures in south, just to the south, so you can see this a little bit better. I'm going to flash these temperatures on for us here so that we can see, you can see that the difference, for me, the difference in temperature is going to be the big key factor for us when it comes to why we have not been impacted quite as much. So you look at areas to the south, and there's a borderline between temps being above freezing pretty well. I mean, you look at Rolla, it's 38, it's 36 in Farmington. That's why we are not seeing as many issues, but it's 29 in St. Charles. And that's the fine line between the areas that are impacted by rain and snow. So that's why we drew that line specifically with up to an inch, because most of that's just going to be the grass anyway. But notice how this is all kind of moving to the south in that warmer air, and then it switches to rain. You see more of a rain-snow mix. You see those big, heavy, wet snowflakes. That's why a lot of this is showing up as this darker color of blue, purple here as you have more of this. That's why we're going to continue to see overall this rain and snow comes to a close over the next few hours. The center of this axis is right about here, which is responsible for kind of this whole mess as it continues to work its way here. That's why we'll see this move from north to south. So Von Justice says Von Justice is over by Collinsville and Pontoon Beach. There's about 3 inches on the ground, still snowing. So he's going to guess to get about another inch of snow, and I think that's a good guess. So good to know. Thanks for the update. I'll give you guys some of those updates as well. Also, let me see if I can pull up some of our messages from emergency managers to give you an idea about what's going on. Just for an idea, the snow is out, the sun is out in Hannibal right now, and most of the snow has melted. So how about that? I think that'll be a little different, but you know, we're still Brad Ziegler in St. John has got some light sleet and rain falling, so there's a little bit of mix here. I think, like I said, I think it's going to be pretty cold. We've got 3 inches in Troy. We've got about 1.25 inches in Rock Hill, but nothing on streets and sidewalks. So in the Rock Hill neighborhood, we got a steady snow falling in Nashville. The road temps at 40 degrees, and the actual air temps at 32. So you also have St. Peter's. You got about 2 inches, 1.5 inches in Weldon Spring. So like I mentioned, those are some of the main things for us right now. This snow will continue to push its way out over the next several hours, but it's just gonna take some time. So let me look to see and make sure we've got any more areas of any more questions, comments, concerns. I think overall, like I said, the timeline of the snow is that we're going to see most of this end over the next 2 to 3 hours. Behind it, there's actually clearing, and that's what's going to be cold. But there's clearing now in Pike County, Bowling Green, and so we're going to watch that in the overnight hours. So that'll cool things down as well, but there is going to be an end to this very soon. So we will have an update for you. Thanks for your reports. We will have an update for you. I'm going to leave the radar in as I end the stream. Thanks for your reports here as we look into the overnight hours. I think things are going to be better, but reminder, it is going to be slow as we get into the overnight hours because of the fact that we have slick spots on the roadways as things refreeze. So, like I mentioned, I will have an update at 5, and we'll do any more updates throughout the rest of the evening. Guys, have a safe night.